In this video, we're going to do some pressure calculations. You should have already watched the video and read an article that kind of walks you through what pressure is. So we're going to talk about three different units of pressure: ATM, mmHg, and PSI. ATM stands for atmospheric pressure, and at sea level, in a perfect world, we would have 1 ATM. So this is the pressure of our atmosphere. mmHg stands for millimeters of mercury, and they use millimeters of mercury as a unit of pressure because in a barometer, which is the tool we use to measure pressure, we have mercury, and we measure the height of the mercury in millimeters. So that will tell us how much pressure is pushing down on the mercury and pushing it up to how many millimeters. So 760 mmHg is equal to 1 ATM. This is the pressure of the atmosphere on a perfect day at zero right at sea level. So not on a mountain, not under the ocean, but right at sea level. And PSI stands for pounds per square inch. And this is another unit of pressure that people in the United States use. It's in inches. And at atmospheric pressure, so again, right at sea level, we have 14.7 psi, pounds per square inch. So this means that 1 ATM is equal to 760 mmHg, which is equal to 14.7 psi. These are all different units telling us the same measurement. So this is like saying that 12 inches is equal to 1 foot. You could say 12 inches as 12 inches or 1 foot. They are the same length. So all of these values are exactly the same pressure. So when we convert between different units, just like you learned before, the unit that we want to get rid of goes on the bottom. So in this case, since we start with mmHg, mmHg goes on the bottom, millimeters of mercury. And the unit we want to end up with, PSI in this case, goes on top. Now we need a conversion statement. So we need an equivalent statement. How many PSI are in how many millimeters of mercury? So we look back here and we see, 760 millimeters of mercury is equal to 14.7 PSI. So 14.7 PSI is equal to 760 millimeters of mercury. And now we multiply our numerator, so we say 400 times 14.7, and then we divide by the denominator, so we divide that by 760. When I plug this in my calculator, I got 7.74. Now we need to talk about significant figures. Well, this number, or the number that we're given, 400, only has one significant figure because those two zeros are placeholding zeros. So I'm going to round this number so it only has one significant figure. So this 7 would push that 7 up. And so my number is now 8. So this is equal to 8 psi, 8 pounds per square inch. So what this means is 400 millimeters of mercury is equal to 8 pounds per square inch. Those are the same exact amount of pressure, just different units. So let's try the next one. Now we start with millimeters of mercury again. So I'm going to put that on bottom in my denominator, and I'm trying to get to ATM this time. So ATM is going on top, atmospheric pressure, and so now I'm using ATM and millimeters of mercury. That's my conversion factor. I know that 1 ATM is equal to 760 millimeters of mercury. So 1 ATM is equal to 760 millimeters of mercury. Again, I am multiplying my numerators and dividing by my denominator. So I do 400 times 1, which is 400, divided by 760. And I get 0.526. 315, and the number goes on, but this has only one significant figure, so I'm going to round to one significant figure, so it's just going to be 0.5 ATM. So again, 400 millimeters of mercury is equal to 0.5 ATM. 400 millimeters of mercury from this one is also equal to 8 psi. So that must mean that 8 psi is equal to 0.5 ATM. Okay, so now we're starting with ATM. So in my denominator, I'm going to also need ATM, so those units can cancel. And I am converting into PSI, so in my numerator, I'll have PSI. So again, I just really want you to make sure that whatever you start with needs to go on bottom, so those units cancel. Now when we look at ATM and PSI, I know that 1 ATM is equal to 14.7 PSI. So 1 ATM is equal to 14.7 PSI. So again, I am multiplying my numerator and dividing by my denominator, which is 1, so I don't need to plug that in. And my answer is 44.1. But again, I only have one significant figure, so I'm going to round to one significant figure. But that 4 doesn't push the 4 up, so it's just going to be 40 PSI. If it had been 45, then I would have to round to 50 PSI. Okay, try these next 3. So pause the video, try these next 3, and then check them when you're done. So make sure you have used the right unit. So ATM cancels with ATM, and I'm left with MMHG, which matches MMHG. PSI cancels with PSI, so ATM matches ATM. PSI cancels with PSI, MMHG matches with MMHG. Now pause the video again and make sure your numbers are correct. So notice 760 always goes with millimeters of mercury, and 1 always goes with ATM, and 14.7 always goes with PSI. So now we're ready to multiply across. And when you multiply by the numerators and divide by the denominators, you should get these answers. Now let's talk about significant figures. This has 1 significant figure, so I'm going to round to 1 significant figure for this number. So I'll have 2,000. So that's no longer the answer. I rounded to 2,000. 2,000 only has 1 significant figure, and then the zeros are placeholding digits. This number has 2 significant figures, so I'm going to round to 2 significant figures. Well, that 2 doesn't do anything to the 0, so it's just going to be 1.0. And this last one has 3 significant figures, so I'm going to round to 3 significant figures. The 8 will kick the 0 to a 1, so I'll have 1,010. And this gives me 1, 2, 3 significant figures, and this last 0 is a placeholding 0. Whenever we have a 0 in between 2 non-zero numbers, so this 0 is in between these 2 ones, that is a significant figure. We count that number. Go ahead and complete numbers 5 and 6.